woke libtard cringe guys, kind of like, it's like an insult to call this little dweeb a guy, but David Pakman, he has Dr. Phil on his show, and he accuses him of being a conservative. And Dr. Phil tries to kind of skirt it under the rug, and he doesn't want to admit it. But as he's giving out his views on various topics, he's clearly a conservative. So I don't know why he won't just own it. Like, you're on the right side of things, guy. Own it. It's okay. Be proud of that anyways. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you stay to the end. I hope you like the video. Subscribe. I post 2 new videos every single day. And let's get into it.
I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se. You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because I am so not political, you can't even believe it. And I'll tell you why. I know nothing about politics. And
Yes, you do. Just wait. You'll see why I say that.
I know why you say that. It sounds like it.
Right.
I talk about these things as cultural issues from a psychological, psychosocial standpoint, how they affect families and people. And they do overlap with some of the things that politicians talk about, but they talk about it from a political standpoint, funding standpoint, how they can get this bill or that bill through. Couldn't care less. But I am interested in those issues in terms of how they impact families in their day-to-day pursuit of life and peace and being able to raise their family in a healthy environment. So there's a lot of overlap, but I don't talk about it from a political standpoint because I frankly don't know enough about the politics of it all.
That's
I'm just willing to admit that. I'm just willing to admit it. I don't think a lot of other people.
It's not that you're admitting it because you're so honorable, Dr. Phil. I honestly think it's like a scapegoat so you don't have to answer questions that are political that you don't want to answer. But as you guys will see throughout this interview, he's clearly conservative. He clearly has specific positions on certain political issues.
No, either. I'm just willing to admit it.
I don't want to make this like, famously there's this story of literary critics were talking about the symbolism in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and he would tell them, that's not at all what I meant. And so I don't want to make this where I tell you about how political all the stuff you say is, but the reason why I say it is a lot of the language in the book, and when you talk about issues like immigration and culture and others, it seems as though it alludes to going back to the good old days, individual decisions in the style that many Republicans now talk about with regard to schooling and parenting, et cetera. But you're saying it's just not the case.
No, and that doesn't mean that there aren't politicians on both sides of the aisle that talk about these issues. But if you really think about raising a family in America, whether it's now or 50 years ago or 20 years down the road, we still have to keep our eye on what I think are core issues in America. And I think the backbone of America is the family unit.
Wow, sounding extremely conservative. Democrats hate family. They want you to get all your abortions. They want gay people to get married. They encourage women to not get married, don't have kids, and to be slaves to a corporate boss instead of to their husband. So yeah, obviously this is a conservative position. Just admit it. It's a good one to have. It's a good one to champion, dude.
I really think that if we have strong families, if we have strong family values, and I think that our families in America, as you've heard me say and read me say, are under attack. And I think some of those attacks are unintended consequences of technology, for example. But these are things that, whether politicians talked about them or not, if they tried to legislate about them or not, I would still be talking about.
So give some examples of that. What are some of the attacks facing families?
Well, I think about 08, 09, we had what I think has been the biggest change to human life since the Industrial Revolution. I think before the Industrial Revolution, we were a very agricultural civilization, right? People worked on the farms. We grew what we needed. but then we became mechanized. And I think back then we were 95% agricultural. Now we're 1% agricultural. Why? Because everything is so mechanized and people move to the cities and all. Well, the biggest thing that's happened since then, in my opinion, was the advent of the smartphone. The internet became so prolific. And I mean, think about it. We're walking around in 08, 09 with as much computing power in our hands with smartphones, laptops, iPads, that we had when we did the moon shot. When we put a man on the moon, we didn't have as much computing power as we can hold in our hands as of 08, 09, and it changed everything. And people stopped being so involved with the reality of life and started getting involved in virtual life. And it's only gone more and more in that direction since that time. And also at that time, we started seeing the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness in young people since records were kept. And
I'm with you on this
changed.
one. I'm with you on this one. Jonathan Haidt has studied and written about this extensively. You and I are aligned on this one. What about the ones that fall under what you call the tyranny of the fringe? Because I don't think the smartphone example falls under that category, right?
No, that's why I say some of this is the unintended consequences of like technology. But then we've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family.
Oh, and who might that be? Oh, yeah, the left, obviously. Like, why won't he just call them out? What people? Who are you talking about? Be specific.
Trying to rewrite history.
Oh, again, the left.
And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history. We want to change what kids are being taught in history. We want to change biology. We want to change all of the
biology. Who's trying to change biology? What party is the one perpetuating the nonsense that there's infinite genders? You know, they can't even name how many there are today because there's new ones every day.
things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
But tell me more about, I don't want to gloss over this. I really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, you know, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what about history?
Now,
Just
Weird. That sounds familiar.
to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
well, there's a lot of history to biology, and you would be missing a big point to pretend that there's not historical biology. But if you want to talk about history, we can not in biology, but just talk about the history of mankind.
Yeah.
We've got areas where they don't want to talk about slavery. We had one a group of people that wanted to start describing slavery in history books as involuntary relocation.
Right.
This was not involuntary relocation. This was slavery. And we've got people that are wanting to rename schools because people that were doing what were the mores and folkways of the times now would clearly be doing things against the law, certainly against mores.
Okay, I have to cut it off because I'm bored. I'm bored. But can you guys see what I'm talking about here? Clearly, Dr. Phil has an issue with the left and aligns with the right. But why is he too afraid to admit it? Dude, I know you're bald, but like, just admit it. It's okay. It's like when you're losing hair, you kind of have to admit it, right? You have to shave your head and just face the truth. I encourage you, Dr. Phil, to do that right now. Thank you guys so much for watching.